I'm Howie Soberger, your political hitman here on Israel News Talk Radio. I'm so happy that you're with me, and I invite you to call in. In North America, the number to call, 301-768-4841. In Israel, the number is 0265-00151. So the state of Israel finally has a government. It only took months and months and months and a couple of elections, but the state of Israel finally has a government. And I don't think this government's going to last. It's a national unity government. They're not calling it that, but that's really what it is. It's a coalition between a right-wing and a left-wing political group. And they both have veto powers over each other. So it's kind of a lame duck government, if you ask me. There's not much that's going to get done with this government because they're all going to veto each other. The deal is that Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, current Prime Minister of the State of Israel, will be Prime Minister for 18 months. Then his political opponent, Benny Gantz, will be Prime Minister for the next 18 months after that. I am willing to wager that this government will last approximately 18 months. And then Israel will be back in the elections. So, that said, I really don't want to talk too much about the Israeli government. A lot of other people have talked about it, and there's a lot more people who are much more versed on the topic than I am discussing this. So I really don't want to talk too much about the Israeli government. But I noticed an article today that appeared in the Jerusalem Post, and it appeared on Israel National News on Route 7, and didn't appear pretty much anywhere else. And it was covering a speech that Mahmoud Abbas gave yesterday. It says today in the article, but it's actually yesterday. And I thought it was something that we should be talking about because nobody's going to be talking about this. And this is something that highlights the double standard that Israel is held to when it comes to their dealings with the Palestinian Authority. The double standard essentially is that when Israel makes a unilateral move in order to protect their country, they are criticized, they are condemned. The United Nations goes nuts on them. The world bodies go nuts on them. The world goes crazy. And Israel sometimes has to back down from their stand. But when the PA, the Palestinian Authority, makes a unilateral decision that affects the peace in the Middle East or affects the status quo or affects something in the Middle East, the world tends to ignore it. So Mahmoud Abbas said yesterday, and he was holding up a poster of what he considers the Palestinian land, and the poster was essentially the map of the State of Israel, which we all know the goal of the Palestinian Authority and all the other groups that were created to destroy the State of Israel. Their goals have not changed since 1964, the day of their creation. Their goals have been to destroy the State of Israel, and their goals continue to be to destroy the State of Israel. But Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, one of the men who funded the Munich Olympic massacre, who was given this prestigious position of president after arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat died, he declared on Tuesday in a dramatic statement that he intends not to abide by various security agreements and understandings between Israel and the PLO, in addition to cooperation with the United States. Now, Abbas said that, quote, starting today, we are no longer committed to security agreements with Israel, end quote. And he was, of course, referring to the Oslo Accords from 1993, the Hebron Agreement in 1997, the Wye River Memorandum in 1998, which established the security parameters, cooperation frameworks in the civilian and security administration divisions between the IDF and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, or in Judea and Samaria. You see, I don't understand why Israeli papers still print the West Bank. Those words, because this is the propaganda that the Palestinian Authority likes to push forth, and by using their words, we are encouraging this kind of propaganda. We are legitimizing this kind of propaganda. Now, the declaration came in response to a proposed Israeli annexation of sections of Judea and Samaria, such as the Jordan Valley and Israeli settlements, in accordance with the conditions outlined in the U.S. President Donald Trump's deal of the century, which was revealed to the international community in late January 2020. Expressing his frustration, Abbas said that, quote, the Israeli Occupation Authority must now carry all its obligations as an occupying power of Palestine, and it must bear all the consequence in international humanitarian laws and Geneva Conventions also imposed on the occupying authority the responsibility of caring for the residents under its occupation. We place full responsibility, said Abbas, on the U.S. administration for the occupation of Palestinian people and consider it a key partner in Israel's actions and decisions against the rights of the Palestinian people. That's what Mahmoud Abbas said today. Nevertheless, Abbas said, because here is where the hypocrisy comes in. Nevertheless, Abbas said the PLO remains committed to a two-state outcome, adding that he planned to seek recognition of statehood in a number of international forums. The Trump administration has said that they will not recognize Palestine, and they will veto any chance of Palestine being recognized as an official state. Now, this should be, theoretically speaking, this should be the end to the charade of Oslo. This should be the end to any semblance of an understanding that there's any kind of peace agreement between the PLO and Israel. Israel should take this and say, all right, the Palestinian Authority has backed out of all the deals that we've signed since 1993, every single one of them. Therefore, we are going to treat them like the enemy that they are. And we will take them and we will destroy them if we have to in order to save our country and save our people. This is the stand that the Israeli government should be taking after Mahmoud Abbas makes a statement like that. Every time there is an attack against Israeli citizens, every time there's an attack against an Israeli soldier, the people who are attacking, the people who are encouraging the attack, the people who are paying for the attack, namely the PLO, should be held accountable. The Israeli government should hit them back hard as they would hit back any enemy attacking their people. Before they had the cushion, the excuse that, maybe we can't do this because we have a peace agreement. We signed a peace agreement with in 1993, and we've had multiple peace agreements after that. So maybe we can't do that. But now that Abbas has canceled all agreements with Israel, Abbas has said no more. We're not abiding by any of the agreements. So if they are not abiding by the agreements, then Israel has no moral obligation to abide by any of the agreements, including the Oslo Accords of 1993. In that case, Israel should not only annex the land, they should remove the people who want to destroy the state. And remove them in any way possible. So either expel them from the country, eliminate them any way that they can remove them, they should remove them. This is how it's supposed to work. This is how a sovereign state behaves. A sovereign state behaves in the fashion of protecting their citizenship. Failure to protect their citizenship means that the government is a failure, and the citizenship should not put up with that government failure. Now, why hasn't major American news media picked up on the story? Because then they can't vilify Israel. By not covering the story, CNN is covering their butts, because every time they publish an article, every time they put a piece on their network vilifying the state of Israel for their treatment of the Palestinian, I use that word in quotations, of the Palestinians, people could point to this and say, hey, wait a second, they have no peace agreement. If there's no peace agreement, if everything is off the table, then Israel has the right to defend themselves in any way they deem possible. They don't have to follow any guidelines. Sure, the Geneva Convention, but then again, the Geneva Convention applies to Israel because they're a sovereign state, but doesn't necessarily apply to the terror group, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And that's what Mahmoud Abbas was saying here. Now, we're going to hold Israel accountable to the Geneva Convention, but we're not necessarily going to be held accountable to the same thing. It is a strange political game that the Palestinian Authority is playing, but Israel should take advantage of the strange political game. And if the PLO has nullified the Oslo Accords and everything that followed the Oslo Accords, then let's go back to 1993. Israel's a strong state. Israel's a sovereign state, a strong state. Israel could take care of itself. If there's one more attack on Israeli civilians, if there's one more attack on an Israeli soldier, it is an act of war against Israel, and Israel should treat it as an act of war. and treat the Palestinian Authority as a purveyor of war and as a potential threat to the democracy, to the existence of the State of Israel, and should eliminate them as deemed necessary. It's quite simple. Politics is easy. Now, will the world freak out? Of course the world will freak out. They're not going to freak out over Mahmoud Abbas saying that we're canceling all agreements with Israel. They're not going to freak out over that. They're going to say, oh, well, they want to cancel it. They have the right to cancel it. It's a free country. It's a free world. They can do whatever they want. That's what the world's going to say. The UN is not going to condemn Abbas for saying that we're not going to abide by any peace agreements. There's going to be no condemnation. There's going to be no emergency UN Security Council resolutions. There's going to be nothing. Not a word is going to be said about this. And that's the world we live in. Israel's always the bad guy. It's never the good guy. I'm Howie Silvergard. This is Political Hitman here on Israel News Talk Radio. Join me in the chat room on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Just click on a big button that says chat room and you'll be in the chat room with me. You could call in because the lines are open. The number to call is 301-768-4841. In North America and Israel, the line is 202-6500151. I encourage you to call in. I want to hear what you have to say about this. Am I crazy? Is this something that I'm just nuts, or do you agree with me? Do you think that Israel should continue to abide by these agreements that the Palestinian Authority said today we're no longer abiding by? I don't. I'm Howie Silvergard's Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. I'm Howie Silberger, your political hitman, here on Israel News Talk Radio. The conversation is already starting up in the chat room. I invite you to join me there on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Click on that button that says chat room, and you can be in the chat room with us. Somebody called Guest says, Israel is a good country, but the world wouldn't let them do what you are saying. So let me just recap for people just tuning in. Mahmoud Abbas yesterday said that they were no longer abiding by agreements, starting with the Oslo Accords of 93, straight through to today. Any agreement that the Palestinian Authority signed, the Palestinian Authority says are null and void. We are not following any of those agreements. If that is the case, and they are not following the agreements, then Israel should follow suit. we are not following the agreements either. So if the Palestinian Authority doesn't want to follow the agreements, then we're not bound by them either. And if Israel's not bound by the agreements, then they should treat the Palestinian Authority as the threat that they are to the nation and to the people of the nation, and they should take care of the problem. They're not bound by anything, so take care of the problem. Do not recognize the Palestinian Authority police anymore. Do not recognize the Palestinian Authority as a legitimate leader of the people living in the area, and they should demand that the UN throw out the Palestinian Authority observers. The only reason they got observer status at the United Nations was because of the 1993 Oslo Accords. So if they nullify those accords, they shouldn't have observer status there either. The Palestinian Authority was created for the 1993 Accords, and since the Palestinian Authority was created to carry out the agreement, the 1993 Oslo Accords, and now they're saying they're not bound by that agreement, then the Palestinian Authority has essentially disbanded. They have destroyed themselves. If that is the case, they should not have observer status in the UN, and Israel should be throwing up a fuss about observer status in the UN. They tolerated it because they had a peace agreement, and this was something that they felt that would help with the peace. But since there's going to be no peace, and it's obvious that the Palestinian Authority wants to go back to war with Israel, Israel should treat them as a legitimate enemy. Now, I have another bone to pick, but that's with the Jerusalem Post and other media that uses terms like the West Bank and occupied territories. There is no West Bank. There is no occupied territories. Let's call the areas that we're talking about by their legitimate names. And there's no other names to them. So we should stop hiding behind the propaganda, the Palestinian Authority propaganda, and we should start using terminology. Words matter. We should start using terminology that is real, that is true, and that is legitimate. And we should start calling, and we should start accepting the words of the Palestinian Authority. You see, this is the thing. For years and years and years, since 93, even before 93, every time the Palestinian Authority, every time Arafat got up and said, we want peace with Israel, in English, and then turned to the nation, to his people, and said to his people in Arabic, this is the first step in the destruction of the state of Israel. We're not really interested in peace. This is our first step to taking back the land. This is our first step to destroying the Jewish people. Whatever terminology he used at whatever given time, and it changed over the years. We never took him seriously. Nobody ever took him seriously. So the North American media never bothered with it. The Israeli media didn't even take him seriously. No one ever took him seriously. It's time we started taking our enemies seriously. With Abbas canceling the peace agreements from 93 to 2020, so that's a lot of years of peace agreements that he's canceled, because every peace agreement actually, wasn't really a peace agreement. So you had the Oslo Accords, then you had Oslo II, then you had Hebron, then you had Y River, then you had Camp David. It just kept going and going and going. With every peace deal that Israel had, Israel gave concessions. Israel gave concessions and got nothing back from the Palestinian Authority. Now, if that is the case, then Israel should start reclaiming the concessions that they gave. They should start reclaiming the land, reclaiming the prisoners. Start rearresting the people that were released, starting with the mayor of Hebron, who was a murderer and was released in the 93 Oslo Accord deal. Start reclaiming these people. Let's go back to the chat room. You could call in, by the way, if you want to talk to me. You could call in 301-768-4841 in North America. In Israel, 02-650-0151. Those are the numbers to call in if you want to talk to me, if you want to be on the show. You can get those numbers, if you didn't write them down, on the top of the page on Israel News Talk Radio, where you could also click on the chat room button and join me. The conversation in the chat room is always interesting, and so let's take a look. Jerry says, Howie, the Palestinians are not Arab. There are some Arabs that are in that nation, I guess from marriage mixing in that. Now, the name Palestine is Latin. The Palestinians came from the ancient people of the Philistines. No, that's not true, Jerry. That's not where they come from. The Palestinians were created in 1964 by the Arab League. They searched after the failure of the 1956 war with Israel. The Arab League tried to find a way to destroy the state of Israel. They realized they couldn't do it militarily, so they tried to find a way to destroy the state of Israel that wasn't an overt attack. It wasn't an overt war because they kept losing these wars. So what they did was they went and they found an Egyptian named Yasser Arafat. He's part of the Hussein. His name's Yasser Arafat Hussein. His name was Yasser Arafat Hussein. He was part of the Hussein family, the Hashemite family, the Husseins. And they took this Yasser Arafat from Egypt, and they created this legend around him. And the legend was that there were people called Palestinians, and that when Israel was created in 1948, they stole these people's land, these Palestinian people's lands. This was a legend created by the Arab League at the time. Now, the idea behind it was that if you could create a new indigenous people in the land, because the Israelis were the indigenous people, the Jews are the indigenous people of the land. If you could create a new indigenous people in the land, you could usurp the old indigenous people. So you just got to sell it. It's a marketing game. So you got to sell it. So Yasser Arafat was a very articulate guy. He was also an arch terrorist who went down and killed people. Americans, French people, Israelis. Didn't matter to him. As long as he could promote his goal. He also created the concept of plane hijackings, so you could thank him for the TSA and all the other security measures that are taken on airplanes. But Yasser Arafat created the Palestinian people out of nowhere, so they didn't exist before that. Before that, the Arabs living in Israel and the Arabs living in that area referred to call themselves Arabs. So Yasser Arafat started selling the idea that they're Palestinians and they have a nationality which didn't exist before. There are no living Philistines. The Philistines were destroyed. If you read the Bible, the Philistines were destroyed in the Bible, and there were no living ones left at the end of the war with the Philistines. So the Philistines were destroyed. There were no descendants, and Mahmoud Abbas and Yasser Arafat tried to make this tenuous connection between themselves and the Philistines. And when that didn't work, because the Bible clearly says that the Philistines were destroyed, they just a couple of years ago, Abbas said that they were descendants of the Canaanites, which is also impossible for other reasons. But this is the way they do it. They lie and they lie and they lie. And nobody ever holds them accountable to their lies. So here we have a situation where in '93 they signed a peace deal. The Palestinian Authority, which was resurrected, the PLO was resurrected from the dead in '93 to sign this deal, and the Palestinian Authority never lived up to any semblance of the deal. They never lived up to their end of the deal. Their police force, which was armed by Israel, killed Israelis. They didn't live up to their end of the deal at all. The Israelis lived up to mostly lived up to their end of the deal. When the Oslo II came out a few years later, the Israelis lived up to their deal. They released the prisoners. They ceded more land. The Palestinian Authority never lived up to their end of the deal. And so on and so on and so on. So 12 or 15 deals later, now Abbas is canceling it all. So it was all just a colossal waste of time. But not like it was a productive time before that, because terror attacks still happened and Jews still died. But this idea, this propagandic idea that the people who call themselves Palestinians now were somehow affiliated with ancient people who lived in the area is colossally wrong. Years ago on another radio show, I had a gentleman on, and he explained very, very clearly that if you look at the last names of people who claim to be Palestinian, they come from Syria, and they come from Saudi Arabia, and they come from Lebanon and Iran and Iraq. And they're not native to the area, and their last names symbolize the areas that they come from. So they basically gathered a bunch of hodgepodge people and put them together and said, we are now a nation. Now, could we say that 2 generations later, the children of these people feel that they're a nation? We could say that, yeah. But there is no historic claim to the land. There is no historic anything. There's no common history. This is not a nation. And there is no connection to ancient people. The Jews, on the other hand, have a connection to ancient people, have a proven connection to ancient people, and have a legitimate claim to the land. The Jews are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. Now we have to also remember that the that the Mandate of Palestine was created to ensure that the Jews get a homeland in that land. And Jordan was a large chunk of the Mandate of Palestine. And that large chunk nobody ever talks about. And there's a reason for that. Abbas never talks about it. Arafat stopped talking about it after 1978 because Jordan shut down their country and killed a whole lot of people there. A whole lot of people who claiming to be Palestinian when they're trying to claim that land. And they refocused because they figured if they get Jordan, then they could use the resources of Jordan to attack Israel. So here we are. We're at a situation where created people are trying to make a tenuous connection with ancient people, which doesn't exist. I'm Howie Silberger's political hitman here on Israel News Talk Radio. Yeah. Hitman here on Israel News Talk Radio. You could call in. The numbers to call in North America, 301-768-4841. In Israel, the number to call is 0265-00151. You can join me in the chat room on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And, of course, the numbers, if you didn't write them down, which I know you probably didn't, are available on the top of the page on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. So Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, the group that was assembled, that was put together in 1993 to sign the Oslo Accords. Yasser Arafat was pulled out of obscurity, and his organization was pretty dead, but it was revived by the United States and Israel because the people living in the people occupying the land, the Arabs occupying Jewish land, had voted Hamas into their leadership, and the Israelis and the Americans didn't like the fact that Hamas was voted into their leadership. So what they did was they brought Arafat back from obscurity, created this Palestinian Authority from his PLO, and signed a peace agreement with him in 1993. Now, the Palestinian Authority, of course, never lived up to that agreement, nor any agreement that followed that. So the Hebron Agreement, the Wye River Agreement, the Camp David Agreement, they never lived up to any of them. Now, yesterday, Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, Arafat's successor, announced that starting yesterday, they are no longer committed to security agreements with Israel. So they've canceled all peace agreements. If that is the case, Israel should take them at face value. They shouldn't try to revive the peace agreements. They shouldn't try to convince them, oh no, please come back to the table. Fine. You canceled the peace agreements, then all bets are off. Then all bets are off. So we're going to hold you, the Palestinian Authority, accountable for everything you do. If you do something that is illegal, you do something that is a war crime, you do something that violates the sovereignty of the State of Israel, a legitimate, recognized country in the world, then we will hold you accountable militarily, we will hold you accountable politically, we will hold you accountable 100% for everything you do. And Israel should start holding them accountable. They've never been held accountable before. And Israel should insist that the world holds them accountable. Now, okay, some people say, Howie, you're a little naive. The world hates Israel, and the world's just going to condemn Israel if they hold the Palestinian Authority accountable, and they start retaliating, or they start defending themselves. Not retaliating, because Israel's not a vengeful nation. But if they start defending themselves, then the world is going to attack Israel. So be it. So be it. Israel's a strong enough nation. Their GDP is big enough. They can handle it. If America doesn't want to give Israel loan guarantees, Israel could say, fine, don't give us loan guarantees. They can handle it. I know successive Israeli prime ministers have been afraid of the United States. They've been afraid to exert the sovereignty of the State of Israel. But you know what? It is time that the Israeli prime ministers grew up, pulled up their big boy pants, and started treating their state like a country. And stop being held hostage by a terror organization whose sole goal, the reason they were created, the reason that they exist, is for the destruction of the State of Israel. It's time for the Prime Minister of the State of Israel and the government of the State of Israel to pull up their big boy pants and start acting like adults, like responsible government officials. This week also marked, and this is all fits into the same thing. Something they called Nakba Day. So what is Nakba Day? Nakba Day is the day of, the day of disaster, the day of misery. And what is the day of disaster and day of misery commemorated by the Palestinian Authority and their followers? That day is the creation of the State of Israel. This is the day of Nakba, the day of misery, the day that we have to mourn. So they commemorated that this week on May 14th, which is the secular date of the founding of the State of Israel. And so, in honor of Nakba Day, in honor of the day that Israel was created, the day of mourning for the Arab people living in that region, one of the most famous Israel haters, one of the most famous Arab lover Israel haters, Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, released a song. Now, the song that he released it on YouTube. The song that he released was a takeoff on a 1960 American civil rights song called "We Shall Overcome." It was a song written to promote black independence in the United States, to stop the oppression of the black people, which was a legitimate claim. The black people were held as slaves, and then they were never treated nicely, segregation and all that in the 1950s and 60s in the United States. It is a dark time in the American history. And this song was written to encourage the society to change, the society to promote black integration into white society. It was called "We Shall Overcome." We'll overcome this oppression. the song definitely does not fit into the candor of the situation in the Middle East and the situation in Israel for sure. But Roger Waters from Pink Floyd decided this was the perfect song to use to promote his hatred and the destruction of the state of Israel. He is a massive boycott, divestment, and sanction. He's a big supporter of boycott, divestment, and sanction. Which, by the way, when these peace agreements didn't work and the PLO wasn't able to destroy Israel through peace agreements and not following them and still attacking the Israelis during these peace agreements, when they were supposed to be working with Israel on security, they created the boycott, divestment, sanction movement. And that movement, when they realized that they couldn't destroy Israel through military means, that movement was designed to destroy Israel through economic means. And so Roger Waters from Pink Floyd is a big fan of boycott, divestment, sanctions. He has convinced many artists not to perform in Israel as a boycott of Israel. So in his song, he said that from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, Palestine will be free, which is a chant that's used by Israel haters, people who want to destroy the state of Israel. So it's amazing to me that people like this and videos like that are not removed from YouTube. Here is a man singing and encouraging the destruction of a sovereign nation, and that is unacceptable by any standards. If I put up a video calling for the destruction of the United States or calling for the destruction of Italy or any other country, recognized country in the world, I would be removed immediately and I'd be visited by the secret police. The Secret Service or whatever service deals with terrorist organizations. But when it comes to Israel, these people are allowed putting up "Let's destroy Israel" videos, and that's fine. Nobody cares about that. This is the hypocrisy of the world. The hypocrisy of the world is the fact that Israel is a recognized state. It's been recognized in the United Nations. It followed the same process that every other country in the world followed to become a country, and it is not recognized as a country by the world. It is recognized as a nuisance, and it is perfectly acceptable to call for the destruction of the state of Israel, to call for the murder of the people of Israel, to call for the genocide of the people of Israel. That is perfectly okay with the world. They don't care, and so if they don't care, the state of Israel must. The Jewish people must. We must stand up and we must protect Israel. We must stand up and defend Israel in any way we can. And one of those ways of defending Israel, one of the ways of protecting Israel, is to hold the Palestinian Authority accountable for what they do. So when Mahmoud Abbas said yesterday that he no longer recognizes any peace deals with Israel, Israel should say, thank God you didn't recognize them to start with. You never followed them to start with. Thank God now you're vocalizing it. And since you are vocalizing it, and now it's official, you've made an official statement, we will hold you by it. Failing to hold them by it is paramount to treason, in my opinion. If the Israeli government doesn't hold the Palestinian Authority accountable for this, they are being treacherous to the people of Israel. They are intentionally putting the people of Israel into danger, and that is not the function of any normal government. A normal government in any country is there to protect their citizenship. Mahmoud Abbas just declared war on Israel. By saying we no longer recognize the peace agreements, he is basically saying we have the right to wage war on Israel. We have the right to commit terror attacks. We have the right to go and attack Israelis. And if that is the case, he didn't specifically say that, but by saying that we're canceling all security agreements, that's essentially what he's saying. If you are saying that and you are declaring war against the state of Israel, Israel should take it seriously and should defend themselves appropriately. Any normal government, if I declared war on the United States, or I declared war on Japan, or I declared war on Russia, I guarantee I would not be breathing, I would not be talking to you, I would not be free for very long. I could guarantee that, and my militia would be destroyed almost instantly. So this is a situation, and this is not a political situation, this is a military situation. The people of Israel are now in grave danger, and Mahmoud Abbas has put them in grave danger by canceling the peace agreements. Doing that, Israel has to take it seriously. I know in the past they haven't taken it seriously, and that has been completely wrong. I hope and I pray that the government of the State of Israel takes this seriously and behaves appropriately and treats the Palestinian Authority the way they should be treated and respects the Israeli people the way they should be respected and protects them the way they should be protected. Israel has one of the best armies in the world. We don't let a bunch of thugs take over the country and start destroying people's lives again. Would be totally unacceptable, and the people of Israel should hold their government accountable for holding these people accountable. I'm Howie Silberger. This is Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. I'll see you again next week.